Today I'm talking to Dr. Melissa Lem. She is a family doctor, president of CAPE, Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, medical columnist with CBC News, and clinical assistant professor at UBC Medicine. Wow. Hi, Dr. Lem. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, Robert. Thanks for inviting me for an interview. I really love how you're using your voice to raise awareness about the environment and health, and I am so happy to be talking to you today.
Thank you. I read you said that climate change is the greatest threat we have to our collective health, and that tackling it is our greatest chance to improve health. Last year, I talked to Dr. Frederica Pereira about how climate change is affecting kids' health. And of course, polluted land, air, and water affect kids in every way. But we didn't get a chance to talk about how to take real action to stop climate change from happening. I love how hard CAPE is working to make a real change in Canada. What campaign are you most proud of?
Well, my entry into this entire planetary health and climate change space was through advocacy for nature and health that I've been involved in for over a decade now. So I would have to say that my favorite overall initiative I've been involved in, that CAPE has been involved in, is PARX, which is Canada's National Nature Prescription Program, and that's run by the BC Parks Foundation. It's a program where regulated health professionals like me, like other doctors, nurses, and psychologists, can literally prescribe nature time to their patients to improve their health and well-being. So we first launched in BC in November of 2020, and then finished launching in every single province with Newfoundland and Labrador in June of 2022. And CAPE actually has regional committees in every province, and it was members and leaders in these committees who were absolutely essential in making local launches happen. So without health professionals advocating directly to the health organizations that they were part of, it would have been really hard for us to make this happen all the way over here in BC. And some of our most effective leaders and champions were actually students, so medical students and others who helped make these connections. And that's something I want to emphasize, is the importance of finding your people, connecting with other people, and working on this together, because we can't do it alone. And amazing things have happened since we've launched. So we've won a couple of major national awards. We've been recognized by the World Health Organization as an effective way to inspire protection and restoration of nature as the foundation of our health. We've been officially endorsed by the Canadian Medical Association, which is the first time a national physician association has endorsed nature prescribing in the world. We were recently nominated by McGill University for an Earthshot Prize, which was founded by Prince William and David Attenborough. So it's amazing what small groups of dedicated people can do when they get inspired and come together and get to work.
That's really cool. You say people who spend at least 2 hours in nature each week report significantly better health and well being. And I love that kids with ADHD like me, who got a 20-minute walk outside, improved concentration similar to a prescription. How important is it to get out in nature?
Well, the first thing I want to do is ask you a question, which is, how do you feel when you spend time outside?
I feel relaxed, calm, and I feel happy too.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how I feel too. So you and I are living examples of this. There have been so many times in my own life when I've turned to nature, gone outside for my own health, and without even knowing the science behind how good it was for me. I actually fell in love with nature when I was a kid, when I was growing up in a neighborhood in Toronto that was majority white. So my family and I didn't look the same or have the same background as most of the other families in my neighborhood. And I was unfortunately bullied and excluded because of how I looked. But it was in the park down the street, in my father's vegetable garden, in the trees on the bushes on the playground, and camping at Bruce Peninsula National Park, where I felt the most like myself and like I belonged. And then when I grew up into being a doctor, my interest in this work grew when I had my own nature deficit experience, feeling really stressed out, living on a busy street in Toronto after moving there from northern BC, where I had my first job, surrounded by nature, and discovering all the evidence behind the health benefits of nature. So from a health perspective, it's really important for us to get outside. At PARX, we like to call spending time in nature the fourth pillar of health, just as important as healthy diet, exercise, and sleep at maintaining a healthy lifestyle. And there's a huge body of research, several decades deep, that shows that spending time in nature, in it and near it, can improve all kinds of health conditions like high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, anxiety, depression, pregnancy outcomes, and like you mentioned, ADHD and development in kids. And that's why I and over 10,000 health professionals across Canada are prescribing it. Not only that, but research tells us that people who are more connected to nature are more likely likely to protect it. And not only that, but they engage in more pro-environmental behaviors that go beyond conservation, like recycling, like saving energy, and voting to elect climate advocates. So by spending time outside, you'll not only be healthier yourself, but you'll be more likely to work to support a healthy planet too.
Yeah. One thing CAPE is working on is to end fossil fuel advertising, including labeling natural gas as methane, which is 100 times more warming than carbon. RBC is the largest fossil fuel investor in the world, but they keep putting out ads saying how green they are. How are you hoping to end fossil fuel advertising?
Well, this is probably my second favorite CAPE campaign, which is our Fossil Fuel Ads Make Us Sick campaign. And it's led by the amazing Dr. Leah Temper. And it was inspired by the doctor-led campaign against tobacco advertising that resulted in a successful ban on cigarette advertising in 1988. So we want to make the same thing happen with fossil fuel advertising, which is an even bigger public health crisis than smoking. So fossil fuel air pollution is responsible for 8.7 million deaths every year around the world, which is 1 in 5 deaths globally, and here in Canada, 1 in 7 deaths. The heat dome in 2021, right here in my own backyard in BC, was made 150 times more likely due to climate change and killed over 600 people in 1 week. And it was the worst weather-related mass casualty event in Canadian history. And not only that, but as you mentioned, natural gas. So burning gas inside our homes releases indoor air pollutants like nitrogen oxides that increase the risk of asthma in kids and could contribute to, according to recent research, 1 in 8 asthma cases in kids in the US. So CAPE's campaign is the first fossil fuel ad ban campaign in the world led by health professionals, and it was endorsed by major mainstream health organizations that represent over 700,000 health professionals, including every single doctor in the country, which I'm also really proud of. So what we're asking for are 3 things. So number one, a ban on all advertising by fossil fuel industries, products and services, and also gas burning vehicles. Number two, strong regulations to address greenwashing by fossil fuel companies. And then third, regulations making it mandatory to talk about the health and environmental risks associated with fossil fuel production and use. And we're pushing for this to happen a number of ways. So we're meeting with government decision makers. We've launched a complaint to the Competition Bureau of Canada against greenwashing of natural gas by the Canadian Gas Association. And they actually opened an official investigation into the Canadian Gas Association in November based on our complaint, and other mini campaigns to raise awareness about fossil fuel advertising. And I'm pretty optimistic about this being successful because there are other cities and countries in the world, like Amsterdam, for example, in France, that have already banned fossil fuel advertising. It's a great campaign, and I'd love to see the progress that we're making.
Yeah. The more I talk to people, the more I see that all these issues are connected. Our world needs climate action on all fronts, everything, everywhere at once. It's overwhelming once you start to find out the scale of the problem. Our premier has walked us backward on clean electricity and is paving our green belt at a time when we are supposed to be making room for 30 by 30. Is protecting biodiversity important to CAPE?
It really is, Robert. Nature and biodiversity is one of CAPE's new strategic priorities in our new strategic plan that we just released at the end of last year. We have a really long history at CAPE of campaigning against dangerous pesticide and herbicide use, which obviously affect biodiversity. But more recently, we've been advocating for protection and expansion of green and blue spaces. So in terms of Ontario, CAPE Ontario has been really active in campaigning against urban sprawl and paving over the Greenbelt. CAPE Nova Scotia was also recently in the news advocating for protection of green spaces near Halifax against urban sprawl and using all the health benefits of access to biodiverse nature to promote their cause. So the word is really getting out there about how important it is for us to protect natural spaces for our health, and CAPE is at the forefront of that.
Cool. Companies are spraying bee-killing pesticides and toxic glyphosate over everything. At least 5.3 million liters of toxic tailings from Imperial Oil from tar sands leaked into Indigenous water, and they lied about it for 9 months. Plastic is everywhere on everything, and all these things can all lead to an increase of cancer rates. 3 of my grandparents died of cancer. Can you talk about CAPE's work to strengthen Canada's pollution prevention laws?
I'm so sorry to hear that about your grandparents, Robert. And it's these stories about real people and the evidence behind the health harms of industrial toxics are what drive our work on pollution. So CAPE has an active toxics program led by the incredible Dr. Jane MacArthur. And one of our main campaigns in collaboration with other groups like EcoJustice, Environmental Defense, and the David Suzuki Foundation has been to push the federal government to update the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, which, by the way, has not been updated in over 20 years. And just think about how much more we know now about the health risks of different chemicals and pollution. We're saying that the realities of environmental health we know today have to be reflected in our laws. So, for example, hundreds of thousands of deaths around the world are linked to air pollution from wildfires. The incidence of cancer continues to rise around the world with the predicted 47% increase over the next 2 decades. And we know that chemical exposures and air pollution contribute to these. We also know that women and kids, racialized and Indigenous peoples and workers are made more vulnerable to these risks because of how they live and work. So along with our coalition partners, we've been working to strengthen CEPA and get it passed before the end of this year. The government got us even closer to a passed Bill S5 in March when the House of Commons Committee studying the legislation reported the bill with amendments. And now we're just waiting for MPs to approve the bill in a final vote. That said, this is a great step, but more and stronger updates still need to be made. But passing this first bill would be a fantastic step.
Yeah. The federal government says Canada is back as an environmental leader, and then it comes out with Cedar LNG this year and $20 billion in fossil fuel subsidies in 2022. CAPE is pushing for a cap on oil and gas pollution. This is the most exciting thing I think you're working on. How's it going?
It's going, but to be honest, it's a pretty tough hill to climb, mostly because of intense pressure and lobbying by the fossil fuel industry to try to keep expanding the industry, expanding their profits, and fool us into thinking that we can do this and maintain a livable future. So we know that the International Energy Agency says we can't limit the Earth to 1.5 degrees of warming or get to net zero by 2050 without ending all new expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure and new fossil fuel exploration. But as you mentioned, we keep seeing approvals of new fossil fuel projects and ongoing billions of dollars of subsidies. And this makes me mad, and it also breaks my heart because every day, every month that this continues means we get more and more locked into more and more decades of burning fossil fuels, which pollute our air and warm our planet. Unfortunately, as it stands now, Canada is not an environmental leader because we keep expanding fossil fuel production. And compared to other countries in the G7, our progress on reducing carbon pollution is way worse. But we could be leaders, is the thing. We have an incredible trained workforce who can pivot into clean energy production. They can expand our electricity grids. They can retrofit homes. They can work on expanding public transit and active transportation like biking and walking and tree planting. I mean, good and clean and sustainable jobs are possible and will improve our health in so many ways. We just need our leaders and we need industries to have the vision and the courage to divert all that money that we're spending on fossil fuels into a healthier future.
I'm frustrated that as a kid I'm told to bike to school, turn off lights, recycle. All good things, but now we have 20 months left to keep to 1.5 of warming, and it feels like it's not enough anymore. There are so many crises going on land, in the air, in the ocean, with people and animals. I'm doing a video of a cleanup of a green space for Earth though, but it feels like it's just a band-aid. I see videos of guys throwing paint dust on snooker tables in the UK. It's just getting people talking and hopefully waking up. I'm jealous because I want to make a big change too. What would you say the best way for kids to make a big change would be?
You know what, Robert? These intersecting crises are a huge and complex problem. And there's no one good answer to your question for every kid because we're all so different and we all have different strengths and interests. But every little thing that we do and that you do as kids helps. You never know what impact your small action will have. So think of Greta Thunberg, how she started doing her school strikes for climate all alone by herself and how she sparked a global movement. But if you want to try to create the biggest and most effective impact, I'm going to share some advice from climate leader Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson on how to find your special climate action. So she recommends that you think about 3 things: what brings you joy, what you're good at, so your skills and your resources and networks, and what work needs doing. And in the middle of those 3 things will be your special climate action. And you know what else is that we don't have to do it all by ourselves. You can join or create a group at school. If you're bigger like me and a health professional, you can join CAPE. You can talk to your parents about climate change and inspire them. There's so many different things that we can do It's like a choose your own adventure book. And there's no better adventure out there than working together to save the planet.
Yeah. This has been a really great talk and a lot of challenging questions. Thanks so much for joining me today. Click the link below to donate to the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. And remember, together kids can save the world. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.